Alright guys, my name is Toby, and I've got this Wilwood brake kit 140-11395. I got my 73 Challenger, 8 3/4 rear end, strange axles, and I'm converting from the drum brakes to the Wilwood rear disc setup. I had these axles installed with my drum brakes and everything was good and perfect. Everything worked perfectly and lined up perfectly. This is the strange replacement for the stock axle. Well, minus 2 inches because my rear end's narrowed. But the configuration is the same as the stock axle, which I actually still have here on the floor. And doing my measurements, it measures the same as my strange axle as far as the offset is concerned. So anyhow, problem is wheel studs are hitting against this yellow spring and this parking brake lever assembly. I tried to remove this yellow spring, but it still hits against this parking brake assembly, so I put the spring back on. So the way I did my measurements, which I have drawn for you, and I'm also going to attach to the email. The way I measured it, my offset is the thickness of this backing plate right here, where it actually, because this backing plate mounts to the axle first, and then my axle slides into that up to this ring groove, right? So I'm measuring the thickness of the backing plate, and then from the backside of this ring groove to the front of the wheel flange, which should be my offset. If I'm not mistaken, I'm measuring that correctly. So what's happening is the wheel studs hitting against here. So what I've gone ahead and done is measured from the back of the flange recess right here, where it's kind of recessed into there, the thickness of that to the front of this yellow spring. And I come up with 1 11/16 roughly, 1.688 inches. Now, when I measure from the front of this groove, which in the Wilwood kit, that's how it goes on, because I'm supposed to slide this thing on over it and put this retaining ring back on, right? And then bolt the whole assembly on, which is kind of crazy because now I got to remove my brakes to take my axle out, which I've never had to do before, but now I will have to. Kind of crazy design, but if you say it works, that's what we'll go with. But so when I measure that thickness, I get 1 11/16. And when I measure from the front of this groove to the head of my bolt, that's from to the wheel flange to the groove is 1 13/16. And then if I subtract the 5/16 of the bolt, that gives me 1.5 inches. So I've got 1.5 inches of clearance here, where I need 1 11/16. So I've got a negative clearance of 1.88 inches or 3/16. So now that actually will just get me to the surface of the spring. So I need additional clearance on top of that, right? If you figure maybe 1/16 of an inch, that's 1/4 inch that I'm off. So 1/4 inch is quite a bit. With my measurements seem to jive, and I don't know. So anyways, what I've gone ahead and done, thinking about that 1/4 inch, instead of mounting the way you want it to be with the clip behind, sandwiched in between this and the axle housing, I mounted it on top. I put the ring on, I mounted the plate to the axle tube first, and then I slid my axle into it like I would normally do, and used my factory, or I shouldn't say factory, the strange retainer, and bolted it on that way. So it's like this on the car right now with the axle in it. It works and it fits. I'll show you. here in the garage. I have it installed. And believe it or not, the caliper centering is like spot on. It couldn't be any more centered. And let's see if I can get around here to the other side. And you can see that the backing plate to the rotor surface is pretty darn good. I think maybe there's maybe an eighth of a lip right here, but it clears nice, it spins nice, the caliper lines up good. I don't know, it seems like it fits really good. My concern is that backing plate has the recessed area for the clip, and that makes it a little bit weaker. But to install it the way that you want it installed, I don't know. I think I may have to have a 1/4-inch spacer installed, have this bearing removed, a 1/4-inch spacer installed, and then that's going to move everything out a 1/4 of an inch, which will give me the stud clearance that I need, and it'll put it at the same offset as mounting on top of this plate, which will make the caliper line up perfectly like it does right now. So I don't know, I'm tempted to leave it like it is, but there's going to be about 700 horsepower going to this car, so I want to make sure it's going to be as strong as it's supposed to be. And it just seems weird to me that I have to remove this whole setup to get my axle out the way that Wilwood wants it installed, when before I could remove my axle and leave the backing plate on, but now the plate will have to come off. It just seems like a crazy design, but it seems like the way for me to make it work is to add a spacer. I don't know. What's your thought? Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. Hopefully I gave you enough information for what I'm doing here. I'm pretty sure I'm measuring it the right way, but I gotta get to the bottom of it here pretty soon. And if I have to send the axle to Strange and have them put a spacer in it, then that's what I'll do. But I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. Thanks.